All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really pivotal moment in American history. And no, it's not a battle with guns and soldiers. This was a rebellion of words, of ideas. We're going to talk about a group of writers who did so much more than just create classic literature. They actually helped shape the very idea of what it means to be American.
So, I want you to picture this. It's just after 1776. The United States has just declared its independence from Britain. It exists on paper, right? But here's the thing. A huge question is just hanging in the air. What does it actually mean to be American? What is the soul of this brand new country?
So with its freedom finally won, the young United States was kind of having an identity crisis. I mean, it was still living in the massive cultural shadow of Europe, and a lot of its smartest people started to wonder, hey, is there a more authentic, a more, American way to look at the world?
And this is where it gets really interesting. You have to look at what they were rejecting. They looked at the world around them, and they saw the rise of factories and what they literally called rotten commercialism. They felt that the old way of thinking, all that focus on cold, hard reason, seeing the universe as just a giant machine, was creating a society that was losing its heart, its soul.
So what was their answer to this soulless, mechanized world? A full-blown, passionate rebellion. Not with weapons, but with literature and philosophy. A movement that we now call American Romanticism.
This table really breaks it all down, doesn't it? It was a total showdown of ideas. The Romantics looked at the values of the Enlightenment and just flipped the script. Where the old guard saw progress in reason and machines and society, the Romantics championed intuition, the wildness of nature, and the power of the individual self. It was a huge shift from thinking with your head to feeling with your heart.
And at the absolute center of this whole movement was one towering figure, Ralph Waldo Emerson. You can think of him as the architect. He was the one who took these big philosophical ideas and really adapted them for the American experience. He argued for an organic view of the world, the idea that nature, humanity, and the divine weren't separate parts of a machine, but were all deeply, deeply interconnected.
And this is his famous call to arms. Emerson basically threw down the gauntlet. He said America itself is this epic, unfinished poem. It's raw, it's energetic, it's huge, and it's just waiting for its great writers to show up and finally give it a voice.
And you know what? A whole new generation of writers heard that call, and each one of them was ready to add their own unique verse to this emerging American poem.
So maybe the most famous voice to answer that call was Walt Whitman. He took Emerson's challenge completely to heart. His whole goal was to write, and this is a quote, the great psalm of the Republic. He wanted to capture the sprawling, chaotic, beautiful spirit of America, and especially of its ordinary people.
His masterpiece, Leaves of Grass, kicks off with this incredibly bold line. I mean, think about it. In an age that was all about conformity in society, Whitman puts the individual self right up front. But, and this is the really important part, for him, celebrating himself wasn't some kind of ego trip.
Because that self was symbolic of everyone. For Whitman, the individual wasn't some small, simple thing. No, it was messy, it was complex, it was huge. It contained all the contradictions of America itself. He really believed the genius of the nation was in its everyday people.
Another key voice here was Henry David Thoreau, and he's a fascinating character. If Emerson was the theorist, the big ideas guy, Thoreau was the practitioner. He was the one who said, okay, I'm going to take these lofty ideas about self-reliance and nature, and I'm going to go live them.
And that's exactly what he did. His famous experiment at Walden Pond gave us the book Walden, which is this powerful argument for a life of, radical simplicity. He urged people to reject the daily grind, to reject consumerism, to get back to nature, and to really explore who they were inside. And this is so crucial. That self-exploration is what led him to become a fierce opponent of the horrible injustice of slavery.
But listen, this focus on the individual was not just a boys' club, not at all. Margaret Fuller, a brilliant writer and a totally central figure in this movement, took these ideas and applied them to the cause of women's liberation, which, for her time, was absolutely revolutionary. So in her groundbreaking book, Woman in the 19th Century, she basically argued that this whole ideal of self-reliance that Emerson was always talking about, it has to apply to women too. She challenged the rigid gender roles of her day, saying that real human progress was impossible as long as women were denied the freedom to become their own independent, complex individuals. Just so ahead of her time.
Now, this was so much more than just a literary movement. These ideas about the self, about justice, about nature, they would go on to reshape the world in ways these writers themselves probably couldn't have even imagined.
Get this is one of the most incredible examples. Look at the journey of this one idea. So, Thoreau writes an essay about protesting injustice. Decades later, it travels across the world and influences Mahatma Gandhi in India. Then, decades after that, it becomes a foundational text for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the American Civil Rights Movement. It's just mind-blowing. An idea born in a small cabin in Massachusetts helped change the world.
So, here's the crucial point, the big takeaway. Writers like Emerson, Whitman, Thoreau, and Fuller, they did way more than just create the first great body of American literature. They were involved in a much bigger, much deeper project. They were helping to define the very concept of American identity itself, one that's rooted in individualism, a deep connection to nature, and a healthy dose of questioning authority.
You know, their work is this powerful reminder that the question of a nation's soul is never really settled. It's not a done deal. It's a poem that each and every generation gets a chance to continue writing. And that, of course, leaves us with one final thought to chew on. If America is still an unfinished poem today, what verse is it our turn to add?